Mr. Chairman,
and we're going to have
Goddard,
10
Virginia
minutes.
Center for Public Safety. I've been here for, this is my 11th year, primarily because of this concept. You know everything that I've said in the past about it. I would simply remind you that the law as it stands today is that certain people have no right to purchase a firearm. The law does not say that they have no right to purchase a firearm that is new from a dealer.
They're going to use it.
So the only way we can identify people is by background check. If we don't apply a background check, then we're letting people bypass current law. We should be checking everyone that buys a firearm from someone who's selling it to a stranger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, Josh Horowitz, the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. We support the bill. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify. Virginia has a gun death problem. In the last 5 years, the gun homicide rate is up 59% through 2016. In the last 10 years, the suicide rate, the firearm suicide rate has gone up 21%. These gun deaths affect urban communities and rural communities alike. It's time that we take this problem seriously and do something to save lives in Virginia. Many people in this audience have suffered losses of friends in our cities. Many people in this community, in this audience, have lost friends to suicide all over the state. Gun violence, homicide, and suicide affects everybody throughout our great Commonwealth. The good news is that research shows that background checks are associated with lower firearm homicide rates and lower firearm suicide rates. We've got a problem in Virginia with gun deaths. Research shows this bill will save lives. It's time to take this seriously and pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask everyone in the audience who's in support of this bill to stand, please?
Certainly. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your making the trip and investing your time to come down here and register your support of this bill. Thank you. Ms. Haas.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lori Haas. I'm with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence, and we support the bill. We've supported this bill every year for over 10 years now. Since we've seen in those 10 years, as Mr. Horowitz testified, we've seen an increase in gun homicides, an increase in gun suicides. It's a public health problem for the Commonwealth of Virginia. In states that have universal background checks, we have fewer law enforcement officers shot and killed. We have fewer intimate partners shot and killed. We have fewer suicides. This is an effort tailored to prohibit persons who are prohibited by law from easy access to firearms. We know that everybody on this committee cares about the Commonwealth of Virginia and the constituents in the Commonwealth of Virginia and wants to do a good job. And we ask that you think about the public safety aspects of this and support the bill. And I would also just like to point out in a recent Quinnipiac poll for 2017, 90% of Republicans, when polled, support universal background checks. This is a good issue for everybody. This is a public safety issue, and we appreciate your consideration and your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your advocacy. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Maurer, Virginia Catholic Conference. We support the protection of all human life, and we support universal background checks.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Martina Lyons, and I represent the Virginia chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We support this bill. We would posit there is no greater responsibility than the members of this committee than to ensure the safety of the public. This is a common sense, pragmatic approach to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, welcome.
Chairman, member of this committee, Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and this is indeed a priority of the governor. He believes in reducing gun violence. And this is the cleanest method by which to do that, keeping the hands out of dangerous individuals by passing a mandatory background check would accomplish that. We have the infrastructure. Our Virginia State Police does a wonderful job. They've actually interdicted 3,500 individuals that should not purchase, so we know those purchases are being done or at least attempted in those instances. So mandatory background check would accomplish exactly what we're trying to do. And I might add, you know, we 2 years ago, we went through a very hard-fought compromise around voluntary background checks. We were hoping those would have been more robust, and frankly, the data does not support that. And so, you know, we attempted voluntary, and now with the data of the last 2 years, we need to take that next step and make it mandatory, and I hope the committee considers that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak in support? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. My name is Kristen Kalasia. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a constituent of Senator Sturtevant's.
We're going to listen more carefully to you.
Well, I would just like to say I support these bills. It seems simple to me. If you can't pass a background check, you shouldn't be able to purchase a gun from someone.
Thank you for being here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. My name is Robin Lowry. I'm also a constituent. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a constituent of Senator Sturtevant's. And I also support universal background checks for gun sales. I believe that this is a common sense measure that we can take that will save lives, and it does not harm law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Well, thank you for investing your time to come down here. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Joanne Sweeney. I'm a constituent of Senator Sturtevant's, and I'm a member of Liberal Women of Chesterfield County and beyond, and we support the criminal background checks as well.
Well, thank you for being here. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good morning, members of the, chair members. My name is Dr. Wes Bellamy, serve as City Councilman in Charlottesville, Virginia. I would also like to express my support for this bill.
Well, thank you for coming down.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot, I neglected to mention I'm also a constituent of Senator Sturtevant.
I'm Gail Sue Miller. I'm also a constituent of Senator Sturtevant, and I would support this bill. I hope you will too.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a constituent. My name is Carol Ray. I support this.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Anybody else? We're giving you, remember, a little bit more time on this bill than others. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Heather Folio. I'm a constituent of Senator Peterson's and Moms Demand Action Volunteer, and we 100% support background checks.
Listen up, Senator Peterson. Thank you for being here. Anybody else? All right. Come right ahead.
I'm Stair Calhoun. I'm a constituent of Senator Sasslaws, and I support this bill.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to this bill? All right. All right. Yes, sir.
Hi. My name is John Lott.
Step up.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Yeah, my name is John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And I just want to say that everybody wants to try to stop criminals from getting guns. The problem is that there are certain fundamental flaws in the background check system that actually makes it more likely that they end up stopping law-abiding, poor, and minorities than it is to actually stop criminals. If you look at the last 5 years that we have the annual reports for the National Instant Background Check System, there were over 400,000 people that were stopped. Only 460 of those were referred for prosecution, and only 209 successful prosecutions occur. That's well less than 0.1% of these cases. We heard earlier the mention of the number of 3 million. And that's been used a lot of times, but with the right terminology is that you should say that there have been 3 million initial denials, not 3 million dangerous, prohibited people that have been stopped. And the real problem is that it's one thing to stop somebody who's a felon. It's another thing to stop somebody simply because they have a name similar to a felon from being stopped. And that's virtually everybody who gets stopped is a false positive. And if you look at it, it's particularly minorities who are harmed as a result of this. People tend to have names similar to others in their racial groups. Hispanics have names similar to other Hispanics. Blacks tend to have names similar to other blacks. 30% of black males almost are prohibited from owning guns because of past criminal history. Whose names are their names most likely to be confused with? Other law-abiding good black males who want to go and obtain a gun to protect themselves and their families. You know, when you fill out the 4473 form to buy a gun, you put down your name, your social security number, your race, your height, your address, and your birthday. And you think all that information is being used. In fact, what you find is that they use roughly phonetically similar names. So somebody who's John Smith with an I and Smith with a Y and an E, as far as the National Instant Background Check System is concerned, those are the same last names. These things can be fixed, but they're not. And the problem with having these additional background checks is you're going to make more false positives so that many of the most vulnerable people are going to be stopped from buying guns. The second issue is the cost that's involved. In Washington, D.C., for example, neighbor here, in order to do a background check on a private transfer, it costs $125. There are places in the country where you can have it done for as cheaply as $55. Background checks normally cost money, but you don't see it for most background checks because it's not like a sales tax that you add on top of the purchase of the gun. It's in the price of the gun. And whether it's $55 or $125, the problem is it's basically poor individuals, many of the people who are living in high crime urban areas, that may be enough to prevent them from being able to legally go and buy a gun to protect themselves and their families. Again, I would argue this is something, as an economist, that could be fixed. The question is, who should pay for these background checks? Should it be the law-abiding individual who goes out of their way to go and have the check being done? Or should, if you believe that it reduces crime, and I don't, but if you believe that it does, then it benefits everybody. And it seems like at that point it should be paid for out of general revenue rather than making the particularly law-abiding individual who you probably don't have anything to worry about go through the process and bear that cost. And so you could pay for it out of general revenue. If you really believe that this is a benefit, that the benefits are greater than the cost, and pay for it out of general revenue would be an easy amendment to fix that. And I'll mention two final things. One is the polls. They've put this on the ballot in many places. In November 2016, it was on the ballot in 2 states, Nevada and Maine. It lost by 4 percentage points in Maine. It won by 0.8% in Nevada. In both cases, the proponents with Michael Bloomberg outspent the opponents by either 9-1 or 6-1. And so to go and cite polls where they say that there's 90% support or 80% support, I would go and argue there's no place where this has been on the ballot where you get anything even remotely close to that in terms of support. And finally, just the research. There's no peer-reviewed study by an economist that finds that background checks reduce crime. There's overwhelming research by criminologists, peer-reviewed, finds no benefit. And there's a simple reason. If I had time, I'd go through that, but I was told to limit it to 5 minutes. But I appreciate your time here.
Well, Dr. Lott, I appreciate your coming and joining us this morning. And I don't know whether other members of the committee know who you are, but maybe they want to look you up on Wikipedia. So right. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate your investment of time.
Philip Van Cleve, Virginia Citizens Defense League. Other states have, those that have universal background checks, Illinois is one of them. You cannot buy a gun without having to go through a background check. And we've seen the crime rates in Chicago, and there they actually surveyed criminals, and 97% didn't go through the background check, and yet they're a state that you have to. So that's a real problem. Also, one of our board members is an FFL, and she says that right now the delays are an hour to get approved, and this will only stress that system more, one that's already getting stretched out. So we strongly oppose. Thank you.
Hello, Erin Looper with the National Rifle Association. The NRA opposes expanding background checks because simply background checks do not stop criminals from getting firearms. Federal law requires firearms dealers to do a background check regardless of location. To initiate this background check before selling or otherwise transferring a firearm to a person who is not a dealer. Federal studies have repeatedly shown that persons imprisoned for firearm crimes get their firearms mostly through theft, the black market, and family members. Less than 1% of them get them at gun shows. ATF has also said that nearly half of the illegally trafficked firearms originate with straw purchases, which is people who are passing background checks to go through, they go through them to give them to criminals who are not able to pass a background check themselves. So on behalf of the NRA, we ask that you oppose these bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I'm David Hicks, constituent of Senator Chafin, and I'd like to speak to the issue of false positives. Anybody recognize my name? David Hicks. You heard of a terrorist, the first one ever convicted under the federal law, locked up in Guantanamo, from Australia by the name of David Hicks? I don't want to tell you how many planes I've missed, how many gun sales I've been denied or delayed on to where somebody else bought the firearm. False positives are a serious problem for honest citizens. Many of those denials of getting on planes took place when I was a federal employee with top secret clearance and the credentials to prove it. The system is seriously flawed and damages law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you making the trip. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Bob Sadler, South Richmond. I just want to make 3 quick points. One of your first and foremost duties—
You a constituent of Senator?
I am not a constituent of Senator Sturtevant. One of your foremost duties as a lawmaker is when you look at a bill to ask what is the potential for abuse. And next to the rate of fire in firearms bill that you'll be hearing later, no bill is more open to abuse than this one. California has universal background checks. They've also got warrant squads going door to door. So does Connecticut. So does New York. In fact, in Buffalo, New York, a widow's wake was interrupted by the police knocking on the door, wanting her to turn over her deceased husband's firearms. Now, we just heard from the secretary, they have the infrastructure for this. I don't know about you, but that scares me. Now, Mr. Hicks also spoke of false positives. The overwhelming majority are false positives. Mr. Lott is the most preeminent statistician in the country, and he has the hard data on this. As for 90% supporting background checks, if Lieutenant Hook were here from the state police, he would tell you that those voluntary background checks are running less than 2 per show. And I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry, if you want to step up and register tell us your name and your organization, tell us whether you support or oppose the bill, that'd be fine. We're out of time.
All right. I'll make it brief. My name is Pat Webb. I'm
We've
a
just got-
constituent of Ryan McDougall. I am opposed to this bill.
Thank you.
The fact that these background checks have racist origins should have you all
All
concerned.
right, thank you very much. All right. Sarah Eben.
Yeah, just to wrap up.
Wrap it up.
Very quickly. It's clear the purpose of these background checks.
Excuse me, Adam, 1 second. We recognize those in the room who supported the bill. If those in the room who oppose the bill would stand up and be acknowledged, that would be great too. All right.
Mr. Chairman, most of them are going door to door.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, briefly, and I know Ms. Haas wants to speak, but I don't know if we can.
Go ahead, Adam. We're just
Briefly. The purpose of background checks is not to prosecute, but to stop the purchase of people from people who are to stop guns from falling into the wrong hands. There's no scientific evidence of these particular numbers for false positives. Public health research shows the contrary. Senator Sturvell provided me with some evidence from the Journal of Preventive Medicine and the Lancet, and whether it's 2.5 million that were stopped or 3 million isn't what matters. And I would say there's a range of information when you go through a background check, whether it's your driver's license number, full range of demographic information, and those that are delayed have to be resolved within 3 days or the purchase goes through. And, 3 days is not too long to wait for that smaller percentage to save lives. So I hope the committee will report the bill.
All right, thank you very much. The motion before us is to report Senate Bill 5 as amended, which has already been rolled together with 412, 432, 145, and 447. This is to report. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
All right, the bill fails to report. Thank you.